Momentum is steadily building around the special interest group elections as various groups begin to take shape. At the center of the contest are political parties strategically positioning their candidates within the structures in a bid to win. However, not all is smooth. Some parties have expressed dissatisfaction with the process, accusing the Electoral Commission of favoritism. Claims the Electoral Commission has strongly denied.
Of NYC at village level, a few of them know.
The people are aware of these elections.
Most youths are not aware. They just did the mobilization today, like in my village.
But remember, in Uganda, voting and election is voluntary.
Meanwhile, the ruling NRM appears to be performing well, while several new players have opted out of this round altogether. Despite pockets of unrest in some areas, the overall mood has remained largely calm. With 2026 fast approaching, are these elections a reflection of what's to come in the general polls? Could they signal an early lead for NRM? And how can opposition parties best harness their strength moving forward? This is The Frontline.
Yes, it's The Frontline, and a very good evening to you. Thanks for tuning in. Time for us now to dissect the real issues happening on the political landscape. A lot is unfolding, just fresh from the youth and special interest group elections. What are the key indicators and what are the lessons? Could these elections serve as pointers to what is yet to come? NRM, as a matter of fact, swept in most parts of the country, and the leading opposition, National Unity Platform, is reeling from the loss. There was a press conference just the other day where the principal of the party highlighted a number of loopholes in the process. Could this be a moment where the opposition ought to reflect and replan and re-strategize? That and much more will inform our discussion with Honorable Proscovia Salam Musumba, one of the founders of the PFF, People's Front for Freedom. What is your official position now?
I am not a founder member of the People's Front for Freedom. The 12 promoters are the fellows that are registered on the books.
So you're a senior member?
Yes.
Okay, good to have you. Major Queen Raboni from the NRM Secretariat, who runs the mobilization office. Thank you for joining us and a very good evening.
Thank you, Simon, and good evening, viewers.
Yes, is it by coincidence that again we have Major Paula Awich, still from the NRM Secretariat, head the external affairs desk at the NRM Secretariat. Nice to have you and a very good evening.
Good evening, but you could also know that I am Major Kui, is also Major Kui.
Wow.
Both of us are Majors Okui.
What?
Okui Raboni.
I know, a which Paula
This is
Okui.
Raboni?
Well, Raboni
Okui.
Okwir.
3 names.
Very interesting.
So if you come to Secretariat and you are looking for Major Kui, you have to be very specific on which one you want.
And in a very special way, we have Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, the Deputy President, National Unity Platform, Buganda, and Member of Parliament for Butambala County. Good to have you and a very good evening.
Why do you call it a special way?
I'm excited to see you.
I'm always here.
I am excited to see you.
You want to scare the majors here.
Well, good to have you and a very good evening.
Good to be here. But you didn't introduce Sama very well. She founded PAFO, Parliamentary Youth.
The Young Parliamentary Association.
The Younger Parliamentary Association.
Yeah.
Founded PAFO, founded the Reform Agenda. Founded
no,
the
not Reform Agenda. I came to FDC through the Parliamentary Advocacy Forum.
From PAFO?
From PAFO. Then to FDC as a promoter.
Yeah.
And life now.
Just a while
so
in politics.
Is she transit? Or
another promoter.
Is she a nomad or she's just in political transit?
No. on that mission.
Oh, good to have you. I'll start with you, Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi. How are you processing NUP's dismal performance in the youth elections?
Does it make news? We've been surprised that you've made it a topic today. If you start, and it's a narrative that the state is interested in, it coincided with a fake opinion poll. And it's a platform for rigging or a rigged process already. Now, youth interest groups, youth workers, disability, now elders, and youth, women, are literally a haven for dictator Museveni. If you want to see how imperfect our electoral system is or has been and will always be, if you don't have a democracy, subject yourself to those processes. Now, the question is, why
how come you won in some areas?
How comes we went there? How comes we had a go at it?
When you didn't believe in it?
When you didn't believe it, that's why we call it a protest vote. That's why Sarama Musumba's corner call it defiance. You must understand that's a paradigm. And some of you think you can have a dictatorship and a free and fair election. You can't.
So does this suggest that you're reluctantly going into elections?
We are going into an election knowing very well that this election we are going to is not a normal election. Does not meet the minimum benchmarks of a democratic process. And we are not in a democratic dispensation. And that's why some of us still hold a view, is that you don't have a multi-party dispensation in Uganda. You have clusters of change, you have clusters, you have groups. Like when you want a wave, you mobilize this ripple and that one and you organize a wave. So that's where we come from. And therefore, some of you have a luxury that you are in a multi-party dispensation. I sympathize with you. That's why you bring up these topics after these elections. Just create a narrative for a state of a fait accompli of the next process.
Okay. Does this outcome give you any motivation or any pointers to what you're going to confront in the next few months?
Now, if I've been around, since when did the opposition do well? In youth, women, or elderly, or the army, or those other elections? Since when? Now, you who has to make news is the one that I'm saying you've not been around. Have you been in Alaska? Or you've been in Uganda?
No, but I thought the National Unity Platform...
No, you thought wrongly.
No, look. I thought the National Unity Platform that boasts of having a strong youth support would be interested in these elections. To test the ground ahead of 2020.
Are you aware that there is a special register for youth?
Yes, I am.
You are aware? Are you aware that there is a special register for women? And are you aware how that register, in some areas, that register was brought on a phone? Somebody will scroll the phone and say, you are not a member, you are not a youth, for you are not a rigi. But I know it. It happened in my area.
Were you ever prepared for this election?
We went in there knowing it was for purposes of exposing the extent of decay. And understand, Major Rabon, and I think this one,
Paula, which?
These which is majors, they went to the bush. The basis of going to the bush was a protestation of a rigged electoral process. They were saying never again on our watch. Therefore, it's a discount, it's an abuse to those who have fought. No, these are heroes because they never died. But the true heroes of the war are in some bushes somewhere in Ruamata, in those other bushes, in Ruwero, in Butambala, those are the real. They died to have a free and fair election. Now for them to leave for a worse election than Obote organized in 1980 is a critical abuse of the entire struggle they went through. They died for nothing.
Let me get this from you as I move to Major Polawich. You were not keen on special interest group elections, right?
No, if you're a political actor, you are keen on every election, even if you can't win it. If you've chosen this tedious process, because the options you have is what they did in 1980, is to draw a conclusion and say, no, this whole thing is fake. Let us go all out, pick arms, have another round of killing each other, and sort it out. But you may install another dictator. Also, you will not have a fundamental change, but a mere change of guard. But we chose this very deliberate, non-violent process. It's very, very tiring, very frustrating, knowing when there is every opportunity, use it to expose.
Thank you. Major Polawich, is there a reason, or would the NRM call this an election worth writing home about?
So much. I think our views is different from Honorable's views. Where I mean we as NRM party. You see, it is already engraved and enshrined in the grand norm of the law, the constitution, the provision, the need to uphold these special interest groups. And therefore, relevant laws were made to that effect to operationalize those provisions. For us in NRM, we know that Uganda is the second youngest country after Niger. We have the biggest population of the youth, and therefore we deliberately take great care and we invest. To that effect, we did it deliberately insert in our party constitution structures for the youth, starting with what we call a branch. A branch in our system is a village, and therefore we deliberately invest that at village level we have branches of our youth, to the extent that we even have secretary for women in the youth, secretary for students in the youth, and it grows up. And therefore, in effect, even in structural organization, we elect our structures at youth level. All these other parties don't, because they don't feel it necessary to invest at that level. Now, this is a political investment, but I would talk at economic investment, which we put in our manifesto and give to the government to invest, and that is listless. But back to political, is that because we take great care that Uganda is the second youngest country in the world after Niger, we deliberately invest there, to the extent that we have 5-member committee in the village. Now, when the National Youth Council comes and they elect 9, all our 5 members in the village get to the national of the 9. And even the other 4 are our youth who would have lost to qualify among the 5.
But do you acknowledge the irregularities?
There is no irregularity. I was coming to that. On the question of register, registers for this special interested group were displayed 4 days. You were even allowed to transfer if your name was appearing on the youth in Kampala and you wanted to vote in Kitgum. You were even allowed. The registry was displayed. I'm surprised Honorable is saying it was on the phone. It was a 4-day display of the register with allowance for transfer, with allowance for correction, with allowance for any other pilot situation that you wanted. So the registry was displayed all over the country. And the voting time was between 9 and 5 in the morning, in the evening. Everything was perfect. Well, maybe perfect could be a wrong word, but everything was fair, because you can't get perfection in life anyway. So it was a free and fair, and that's why the diction, the choice of words in these phrases are fair, not perfect. That's why I withdraw perfect, because the choice of diction is fair. Therefore, what our colleagues have not done.
Did you see the role of RDCs, the military, and agents of the state in disrupting the exercise in many areas of the country?
No, the role of the central government that came is in area of law and order, where there appeared to be confusion and they had to provide an overarching role of security. But in the election, it was managed by Election Commission.
What is the possibility that NRM manipulated the mess, the chaos, to win?
There's no possibility.
To secure
There
a
is
win.
no possibility, Kagwa, because we are structurally, institutionally, so prepared that we did not even expect such, because we know for a fact that our colleagues don't invest there. While we invest in terms of even superstructural, in terms of legislation, the internal legislation of the party, we took due care to do that. And not only do we take due care to engrave and enshrine in our party constitution, but even operationalize it. Some of our friends think it is dull, boring, and unnecessary. When it comes to the results is when they start to cry.
To what extent does it give you a sense that maybe finally NRM has been able to woo back the youth vote?
A lot. You see, the NUP, for example, you could say the youth that formed the NUP came from the success of NRM. It's like you are trying to get a solution and you create a problem. For example, you want to industrialize. In the process of industrialization, you create pollution. So are you going to run away from industrialization because you fear pollution? No, you industrialize and deal with pollution. So what happens is that in the government attempt for education, in the government attempt for health, vaccination, immunization, and all this, many youth were educated, especially in the urban area, and it led to that bulge. And that bulge is what formed the youth base at the beginning. But we later on followed it up to cure. We followed it after realizing that true, you have educated the youth, true, you have made them healthy, but now so what? They are now crying. We have followed it with the various interventions, the economic intervention that I said, to the extent that even in urban areas where we had those youth, including Kamocha, they're now with us. They all voted for us.
Thank you.
So we corrected it.
Thank you. Honorable Salam,
Yes, thank you.
NRM won and they're chest thumping. Did the opposition lose the special interest group elections?
What are special interest groups and what is the intention? What is the rationale? The rationale is to give a platform for the youth voice to be heard, to be articulated, the persons with disability to be articulated, the elderly of all lots, elderly as a bloated thing, also have some kind of voice, saying what nobody knows, just presence. So what was the purpose? What's the rationale of all these special interest groups? I think that's where we lose it. It's not for chest thumping, it is to have a viable community of young people that are proud to belong, that also add their voice to the growth of this society. It's not just numbers. If you want numbers, the numbers are there already in the adult suffrage vote. So what is NRM chest thumping about? What are you writing home about? When the biggest investment you have for this country is ghettos, you know? And they have, and your entire purpose is to popularize ghettos even where they don't exist, as if it's the smartest word in the world. Okay? You have also failed so far to review, as required by, I think, Article 78 of the Constitution, to review and evaluate the special interest group every 10 years. You haven't done nothing. And so I can't sit here to celebrate unconstitutionalism,
okay, but
for the sake of talking.
Do these elections give pointers to what 2026 holds?
They do nothing. They just point to the rot, systemic and systematic rot I mean, if you cannot pay attention to what the Constitution commands, then what are we discussing? Are you aware that this is supposed to be reviewed every 10 years?
Yes, I am.
Have we done anything like that in the past 30 years? So I'm not part of that chorus that wants to talk about failure and celebrate failure.
Okay, ordinarily you'd say that the youth and special interest group elections, youth and other special group special interest group elections set the tone for an election because
They do nothing.
they are the first elections to be held.
I'll tell you, check your pulse, check your political pulse. It's an empty space. Because no youth worth the name, apart from celebratory things. There's nothing. What is the function of that? Even the youth councils are dead. The women councils are dead. If you want to know about people with disability, the first voice and the last voice must have been for James Edieza Mwanda. Ndezi. I'm sure you don't know any person with disability that is talking for disability in this country anymore. And if they talk, what do they say? They even have a minister, but what are the issues on the table? It's an empty space. Talk about the elderly. What do they talk about? My dear friend, Fonopondo, is finding a safe entry into politics. But so what? What have they impacted the body politics of this country?
Okay.
When men were men, and my brother here was very active in politics, I mean, we talked issues, not numbers, not celebrating empty nothings.
Okay.
Tell me something about special interest
Special
groups.
interest group elections are one of the key things on the electoral calendar, on the roadmap of the electoral commission.
Yes, for accountability purposes and for purposes of drawing
We
allowances.
count that ticked.
You can
In
go
whose
on.
favor?
Have it. Have all of it 100%. Then what?
It was 89%.
I'm giving you 100%. Then what?
Major Kirabon, you won, so what?
We won, and it gives us a lot of energy, but also gives us a challenge. You know, we have had these debates in these spaces. One thing I found out is that sometimes we, the leaders, are not moving in tandem with the people. Mwalimu Nyerere used to say, a leader should not lag behind, and the people he leads go in front of him. Neither should he go in front and leave the people behind. A leader should move with the people. We could sit here in Kampala and debate and make analysis and say Uganda is falling apart, but the people who live in this country every day, they go to work in their shambas, in their markets, the students who go to institutions of higher learning, the mechanics in their spaces where they operate, know where Uganda has come from and where it is. And when they go to vote and they express their hopes and aspirations through their vote, let's not laugh at them. The elite, we the elite have a tendency of being divorced from reality. Now look, NRM, we have very many contradictions which have been there since its founding in 1981. But there is a mechanism for resolving contradictions within the NRM.
NRM since 1981?
1981. And contradictions be there, internal, there are methods of resolving them. But on the whole, NRM has always insisted on grassroots representation. And that's why the numbers look the way they do. Because if you have in the 72,000 villages of Uganda a committee of 30 people, if you multiply simple arithmetic, it tells you that the NRM has around about 2.1 million people when they finish their primaries. Now we have finished our primaries from village to district. Now, when you come to this selection of special interest groups, You have 5 people, older persons, you have another 5 people with disabilities, then you have 9 youth. That makes 19. When you multiply that, you come to a figure which is like 1.5 million people. Now, this is a very high level of organization. When a political party starts with those numbers, and each of those people mobilizes 3, we have already won the election.
That's what.
Now, when you come,
psychological.
I thought that's
when you come,
NRM has always had, and
yes, because it's the reality.
Without any change, nothing.
Because it's the reality. If you have 30 people in every village, and you have 72,000 villages, and at the starting line, you already have 2.1 million people, and each one of them mobilizes just 3 members of his family or friends, you have won an election. So, but if now the leadership is vigilant, and Okwiri goes to Toro and mobilizes 5,000 people.
Very good road, yeah?
We have a tarmac road from Fort Portal to Kasese, a tarmac road from Fort Portal to Bundubujo, a tarmac road from... Yes. So the NRM, while it looks at the fundamentals in economics and tries to resolve problems of infrastructure, income, household income, youth unemployment being addressed through EMIOGA and PDM, when all those are done, together with this representative democracy, grassroots mobilization, you just can't beat us.
Okay. Do you feel proud that you won an election where the opposition was literally withdrawn? They were not interested at all. You went it alone.
But this is a competition. We are not responsible for their paralysis. If the opposition cannot sit down and analyze Uganda's problems, if they have failed to work together, even on the basics of saying we don't agree with this economic strategy, we don't agree with the methods of democratization that the NRM propagates, they have failed to agree on that.
Are we supposed to?
If you think that because the narrative has been Museveni is the problem, Museveni is the problem on this, Museveni is the problem, the NRM is the problem, then mobilize and confront the problem. But the NRM has systematically dealt with problem after problem, slowly but surely.
Thank you. Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi, the opposition seems to be setting their eyes on the big ball, and that's the presidential and parliamentary election. How critical are you looking at the roadmap?
Fundamentally, you see, let me first clarify a few things. See, Major Rabon and myself are products of youth activism. And I think to an extent, Honorable Salam came through civil service and straight into election. But me and Major Rabon are a product, pure products of youth activism. For him, with a little bit of a background in military. Not a bit, with a solid background in the military. Therefore, maximum discipline, maximum definition of purpose and a mission. Now, the tragedy that can happen to a country, for which we must all be sad, is that you have young people who are being ushered into public life through rigged processes. From the age of 18, you are teaching young people.
Corrupted.
You are corrupting them. For me, that's the biggest scandal that you are causing, is that you are teaching young people, 18 years, 20 years, saying you can have your way through rigged processes. So you rig processes, because if you are aware, what was the role of a PISO in this process, even including the national registration of youth, how the DSOs were tossing up young people from one area and demanding money. Watch our speeches in Parliament during these processes. We complained of the unfairness. But for me, the strategy is the tragedy that we must condemn the perpetrators of this, is that you have a young people even if it's at a family level, and you're a mother or a father, and you are teaching your children on how to beat processes, how to steal food, how to not to put food on the dining, and that's for me, that's the biggest worry. That are you going to have a very conscious youth like Rabon, like Mwanga Chivumbi, like Salama Musumba, like who, when they grow up to become citizens, where at the infancy you corrupted them? And why should a political formation that has been in charge of this country for 40 years now, still need to manipulate? What a gross failure. How can you, after 40 years, you have perfected?
So this is the irony. NRM is celebrating
Theft.
the indiscipline of fraud.
Of fraud. After 40 years in power, is that for them to survive, they still need to manipulate a youth election, a women election, an election with a disability. What will disabled people do to you that you need to manipulate them? So for me, that's a bigger debate we must have, is that what kind of thinking is at the top level of this thing called NRM? That they think on any given thing you have to be crafty, you have to rig, you have to nothing you can do straight. Even if you are coming to parliament to pass a law, you corrupt members of parliament, you pass it, the eyes have it when the nose have it. I mean, what kind of society are we building? I was in China just a few weeks ago, and I went to a supermarket. And where we were doing, we introduced ourselves and says, hey, what do you do? I told them I work for government. So they Googled, there's the way the technology now, IT. They laughed, they couldn't say, they said, you were a thief. And they laughed and said, you are government, you were a thief. Convince us you are not a thief. So, as people,
that's the perception China has of us?
No, when you Google and you say government, what it gives you is that he's a thief. Now, when young people see you, me, who are in government, they say, a thief. And you are introducing more thieves onto the... So, for me, that's a bigger debate.
Global market.
That's a global market. For me, that's a bigger debate. That are you going to have a Rabon? Are you going to have a Salama Musumba out of this lot that at the initial stage you are introducing them to this kind of manipulation and think that's the right way? And gentlemen, and the tragedy is you have gentlemen paid at secretariat
For that.
Paid ministerial level wages to simply do that. I know. These guys are paid as ministers.
Major Paula, you want to come in on that?
And they're paid to corrupt the younger people and give us this lot, that product. And they're proud that they have perfected it.
Okay, Major Paula, you could give us your response.
My point of intervention is that Honorable Kivumbi he has brought an indictment on NRM for manipulation. He is the complainant, is the investigator, is the judge, and is the executor. To accuse us of manipulation and fraud in this interest group election is not correct. The registry, as I said, the whole process was managed by Electoral Commission. And to the extent that there were 4 days of petition for any irregularities in the registry process. And to the extent that because in the case of their party, they only involve the youth in social media, they have not invested in institutional framework to build the youth from down. We have done it. Now, where is the manipulation? Where is the complainant, is the investigator, and he has judged and ruled on us that we are manipulators and we are fraudulent? That is not correct. It's not correct to say we are fraudulent in this. We have deliberately...
Okay. Do you agree there were gross irregularities?
There was no gross, not even irregularity. Even the word gross, you're using double negatives.
Okay.
Gross irregularity. There was nothing.
Do you agree there were glaring irregularities?
No, I only said fair. That is the word, the choice of diction I had. Fair. This election.
What's your
fair.
parameter of fairness?
Fair means you could find, for example, people who didn't come to inspect the registry for one reason or the other, that they could have been a petition, my name is not there, or I was supposed to, meant to be transferred, or even others who came in late. Such minor irregularities. But short of that, Kagwa disinterest group was clean election. In any case, how do our colleagues say there was manipulation when they didn't even invest in it? They didn't even, in many places, they didn't even present candidates. Meaning, it now brings me to Honorable Salam's issue of the evaluation of the importance of interest groups. She seems to think that we have this and they are not important. Then, question the wisdom of the Constituent Assembly makers. Question the wisdom of the lawmakers, which I think you are one who operationalized those provisions. You know, provisions in the national constitution has to be operationalized by an act of parliament. Now, if we are to evaluate what they have done, for us we have done our part to make it work. Because if we didn't make it work, still the blame would come to on us. Oh, you have interest group, you have failed to operationalize, you don't have them, they are not elected. Now, it would also be unfair to judge these people in their working by how much they speak. Some of these people achieve their aims and objectives without not necessarily talking. They sit down, they read policies. For example, in the case of the youth, they have put in provision where, even in contract, PPDA, there are provisions where a contract below 30 years give to the youth. They have made sure that things are institutionalized in laws, in policies. So do you want such a person to speak for you to know, oh, disabled X is speaking, or youth Y is talking? You can talk through institutional framework to set out objectives and achieve them. But even then, if we had not done it, we would still be blamed. So we do that and we have achieved where we can, where we have.
Okay.
Now, to say that the opposition was not interested is a wrong packaging. The opposition were interested. In fact,
are they saving face?
Yes, the eve of the election, some of us were not sleeping, thinking, because the talk they have had, the social media hype they had done, they appeared like they were very serious and giving us that time. To the extent that we even thought back and said, are we serious? What these people are talking in social media, it seems we have not done enough. Our friends are laid out here said, look, we have institutionally invested from the grassroots to up. Let's see what happened. But now after losing is where they said they are not prepared. Look at the records on social media. They hyped and said they were ready. And they said they were going to sweep.
Have they been bad losers?
They are bad losers. They should just go back on the drawing board and say, for the case of the youth, Uganda is a young country, the youngest second to Nigeria. We should see if we really want to invest in youth, if we really want to invest in special interest group, and we need it. If you say there's a need for evaluation after 10 years, so be it. But I'm sure, Honorable Salam, if we went for a review and we say we remove, or for example, I say Honorable Salam said remove the women affirmative action because it is enough, they want to be happy with that.
Thank you. Honorable Salam, in your submission, you seemed to downplay the significance of special interest group elections. But they're one of the key events on the electoral roadmap drawn by the Electoral Commission. Have you, as the opposition, sat down to critically scrutinize this roadmap and what it speaks to in regard to the forthcoming election?
That's our business every day, 24/7. Our business is politics. Our business is putting our energy where the power is. some of these structures are redundant, just propaganda value, like the youth structure, the women structures, the women council structures. They're just propaganda value. They do not impact the lives of the people that they are set out to do. And so if they are basically residual things, leave them be residual. And they are residual things.
They are the starters.
They start nothing.
They are starters for the next election.
Listen to me. They start nothing. If they were starting anything, then you would know that the development and the way resources are channeled, they will be channeled to the villages. These are propaganda tools and weapons for my dearest brother, intelligent, the Bonnie Okwi, reduced just to sanitizing robbery. Stealing a life of a young person is the worst you can do to a country, you know? So what we have is a redundant, idle structure that they call that they've invested. You have done nothing, sir. How much have you put there? People are scampering to these positions as begging addresses in the hope that when you're in a youth council or you're in the structures, you might get a job as assistant what? RDC or something, or NC, something to be dished out. You have a desperate young population that is latching on to anything to be, but it's an empty space. These are redundant, idle propaganda tools.
Okay, honestly speaking.
Yes, and I'm being honest.
The special interest group elections are behind us. What do you see next?
These are recycled democratic waste things. Very, very, very recycled, empty, not reviewed. They are not fit for purpose. You're wasting young people's lives. Let me compare, Rabon. When men were men, and there was the Young Democrats, and they were the NUSU, National Union of Students of Uganda. Are you near that as an entity that has all the majority resources? The youth, the young people manufactured by NUSU, manufactured by the Young Democrats, are unparalleled. And they were not, I mean, who have you made as NRM? You get people from other parties that are ready for use and you turn them into yours. You have not made your own cadreship. And that's an indictment on you. What are you doing in your offices anyway? Rumor mongering? I don't see a product. I feel sad for us as a generation.
Okay, one thing you must accept is that the NRM is now tapping into the youth dividend. For what reason is a discussion for another day.
Listen, let's be honest with ourselves. NRM is doing nothing onto the youth agenda. There's no impact. Show me from Eastern Uganda, where I come from, show me a product that this is an incubation. Because youth is supposed to be an incubator.
There's something called skilling Uganda.
I mean, if you've not provided universal primary education, you skill who? You skill who? You say it is layers and layers of failure that are getting compounded.
With Major Okwi Raboni to give a rebuttal to the submission of Honorable Salam Musumba after the break.